Welcome everyone to this evening's cancer support cooking for wellness class. Myself, Chef Jason, and Chef Josh, and we have our dietitian Michelle. I was about to say Chef Michelle. We're glad for everyone to join us this evening for this week's class. This is our recipe renovation class, the second Thursday of every month. We have this recipe renovation where we take common or those comfort foods that we all enjoy and just kind of give a spin on it. So one of us will do a lighter version, and then one of us will do kind of a totally flipped version to make it healthier in those regards. So hopefully you'll enjoy both of these and kind of take a little bit of those things away and try them at home. So we got a little creative here. Give you the essence of this week or this month. We're doing broccoli casserole, especially in this time of the year, the weather. You want something nice and warm and comforting. There's nothing like broccoli casserole, but you don't want to have the guilt that goes along with it. So we're going to kind of give you a little bit better versions so that you can have some options and still enjoy the essence of it without the guilt. So, yes.
So I chose to do kind of the traditional broccoli casserole theme. So I am very much going casserole style. So in kind of a just an homage to the original recipe that we did. Now, as hard as I tried, I could not stay away from a little bit of dairy in this. So we are going to use some low-fat cottage cheese to richen it up, and a little bit of Parmesan. And then there is just a tiny bit of butter in here, but you could very easily leave that out if you wanted to. So I'm going to get this rolling real quick, and then I'm going to turn this over to Chef Johnson so he can kind of walk you through what he's doing.
Yes. So I have the totally flipped, tricked out version where I'm going to go all the way to the left, and it's going to be broccoli casserole-ish. So what I'm making is a broccoli casserole, quote unquote, salad. So kind of create broccoli salad, take out all. We don't have any dairy in it or anything of that nature. But it's going to still, if you were to try this, it's still going to give you that essence of broccoli casserole. So we're going to start. I meant to say this is a roasted broccoli casserole salad. So we're going to start by roasting off our broccoli florets. So like I said, it's going to give you that sense of a broccoli casserole. And roasting it's going to give it some depth of flavor at this point. It's going to release a lot of the natural sugars in it. It's going to earthen up the flavor of this, and the char that'll happen on this by roasting it. We're going to roast it at 425. That'll really bring a lot of flavor to this. And all I've done is season this with a little salt, pepper, a little bit of thyme, onion powder, and garlic. And then we'll roast it on a sheet tray. And we're not going to, and the key in this in roasting is because it is a salad, we don't want our broccoli to get mushy. We wanted to get a little color on it, but we still want it to kind of be al dente. We still want it to have a little texture to it. We're going to roast it probably about 10 minutes or so, and then we will cool it down, or we can let it get to room temperature because this also would be good warm.
So while he's doing that, I've got some olive oil, just about 2 teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon of butter in here. I got that nice and hot till it stopped sizzling, and then I threw in some shallots and some fresh garlic. And since those have sweated down and they're nice and soft and translucent, now I'm going to add some mushrooms. So my finished dish is going to be a farro and mushroom casserole with some charred cauliflower. And that's got a little bit of fresh thyme in it.
Say that again. That just sounded great.
Right. So I know. So mushroom and farro casserole with charred cauliflower. And just like Chef is doing with his broccoli, I do with my cauliflower before we started. A little bit of olive oil, a little bit of black pepper, and then that really nice hot 425 oven, 450. And just kind of a tip and a trick, if you don't often cook above 400 degrees, the first time that you do it in a while, it might be a little smoky, because generally if your oven doesn't get up that high, you're not burning off a lot of stuff. So if you do that and you're like, what did these guys just tell me to do? My house is going to burn down. If you've never been to 425, get there before you cook, and then cook at 425 later.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let these mushrooms cook down, brown up a little bit, and kind of shed a little bit of their excess moisture. To help that along, I'm just going to add a little tiny shake of salt, which will help pull that out.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to make what we would call the dressing that we're going to toss our roasted broccoli casserole salad in. And so I'm using, I said no dairy, but I'm using a Greek yogurt, just to cut a little bit of the calories, and almost going to be almost savory, so that it can balance this broccoli casserole. So I use the Greek yogurt because, you know, in a broccoli casserole, you know, you have this creaminess to it when you're eating it. So I still wanted to give that creaminess to it. So that's why we're kind of making this dressing. So a little Greek yogurt, some Dijon mustard. I am adding a little bit of honey, not totally for sweetness, but just to balance the acidity that's coming from the apple cider vinegar that I added, and because it is yogurt, there's a kind of a bite to it. So the honey is just going to kind of balance that out. I don't want to make it sweet. I just want to balance the flavors. So I added some apple cider vinegar, the Dijon, a little bit of honey, and then I'm going to mimic what I seasoned the broccoli with. So a little bit of thyme and onion powder and garlic powder. We're just going to add that in there also. Mix that up, and that's going to be our dressing.
And this is a great alternative to doing, because most kind of creamy dressings are going to use like a mayo or some type of cream. When we're using Greek yogurt, we're going to add in some protein. We're going to add some vitamin D and calcium because of the dairy-based option. There are some, since we're doing more of a savory, there are some alternatives to dairy-based yogurt. You could do more of like a cashew yogurt. That's going to mimic really well. With all the seasonings that chef's adding in. So if you wanted to go non-dairy, that would be an option to consider.
So I'm going to pick back up. I'm going to make our sauce, if you will. So I've got some low-fat cottage cheese here. I'm going to add an egg and some fresh parsley. Yes. And some dried thyme, not a whole bunch. I find that dried thyme can be very overpowering.
Yes.
If you use too much of it, it can almost like, it can take a dish sideways.
Yeah.
So just be cautious if you're using that. I'm gonna stir up the cottage cheese and the egg. This is gonna help us kind of bind and hold together a little bit. And then I'm also gonna add about half of our quantity of Parmesan cheese. It's only a quarter cup. That's not a whole bunch, but it will, you know, bring that saltiness and cheesiness to it that we've come to expect.
So we got mushrooms, farro, Parmesan cheese. I mean,
All the things.
all the things.
So, and then the farro, so farro could be considered one of our ancient grains. I like to call it barley's big brother. It's a little bit more toothsome. It takes a little bit longer to cook, but it's absolutely delicious.
It is.
You can cook it like rice, where you cook like 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1. So a cup of dry farro to 2 cups of vegetable stock or chicken stock, or you can cook like pasta. So I generally cook it like pasta, which means in an excess amount of water. And then when it's done, you strain it all out. And then that way you don't have to try to like figure out the science of, you know, the exact amount. Otherwise you end up with, it can be overcooked or it can be undercooked, or you can cook it dry. There's a whole bunch of different things that can go sideways with that. So my mushrooms are, we don't want these cooked completely down. We just want to kind of tenderize them a little bit, reduce some of the water activity, because we are going to cook this a little bit more. So I'm going to turn that off.
I'm glad you said that, Josh, because people don't realize that when you're kind of pre-cooking something, if it's going in a casserole or something like that, you want to keep that in mind, that you don't want to cook it all the way down per se, because once you put it in that casserole dish and then put it back in the oven, it's going to continue to cook. So you're just doing it just enough, like you said, with those mushrooms, you're cooking out a lot of the moisture that comes in there. And enough to where now, once you add it into the casserole, that you don't have all this excess liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, quinoa is actually a great substitution for the more fiber and protein. So both of the grains that we just said have some increase of fiber, and with satiety, it's going to help with bowel function, and it's a way to add in protein to a side dish, so you can enhance that overall plate. That's why using the cottage cheese again that increase the protein content. That basically has zero.
Right, so we're going to, I'm gonna take my cheese mixture and my mushrooms, and we're gonna add all that in there, and then we're also gonna add in our farro. I've got a little bit more than what I need here, so I'm gonna kind of eyeball a little bit. And we just want to get this mixture, nice and mixed up. If you stir it kind of quick, it's okay if your mushrooms are still a little bit hot. It's not gonna hurt anything. And then I'm just gonna put a little bit more parsley in here because I just feel like it needs it. And then we're gonna add this to our casserole dish. A little bit more of that if you like. See, it's not really a science here. Recipes are just guidelines.
So Chef Jess, if I wanted to add some green onions or chives to
Oh,
that,
yes,
would that-
please. Yeah, that would be amazing. I might wait until the very end and throw them on fresh. So you get that nice sharp bite, and that, kind of that brightness that you get from scallions or chives. Fresh thyme would be good in here. You can put sage in here. That would be
yeah.
really banging. Where I think slapping is what they say. Right? And so this is basically ready for the oven. And then what I'm gonna do is top it with my charred cauliflower. And we're not gonna mix this in. We want it to sit on top because as this bakes, the little bits of the cauliflower are gonna get really crunchy and crispy. And that is an amazing texture and experience.
So what I've done is, if you can see here, I've shaved my carrots. Now you're like, well, I'm not comfortable with that, or you don't feel like doing that, and you got some shredded carrots. No problem. Shredded carrots. I just did this because it just gives a different presentation to the dish, add some fun to it. And all I'm doing is taking like your potato peeler and taking my carrot, and I kind of have it at an angle, and I'm just adding a little bit of pressure and just going down and getting some shaved carrots. And so once you add this to the broccoli, and then I have some julienne red onion. So we have that freshness from that. And we just have some nice, so it's just going to add some, what I call character to the salad. Let's check our, well, before I check my broccoli, also part of this is, and as Michelle said, Josh has farro, and I just have some really already cooked up quinoa here, and I cooked it in broth. Anybody who's been in any of these classes, I'm always cooking in some type of vegetable broth or chicken broth to add some flavor to it. And then we're going to mix that with some little nutritional yeast, because you're like, well, you can't have a broccoli casserole without cheese. Well, we're not going to have cheese in, but that nutritional yeast is going to kind of give you the essence of cheese. And so we're going to mix that, dry that out with this quinoa. It's going to add a little crunch, a little texture to this, but then also kind of be the essence of the cheese going into this dish. So let's check our broccoli, see where we stand with it.
And as soon as he vacates the oven with the broccoli, I'm going to throw this back in. And basically all we're looking to do is, I know I just checked it, it looks fabulous. And we're just going to let this tighten up. That egg will kind of
You guys
hold
can see
everything
this
together.
now.
That's,
You guys like our new,
that is,
and so it's nice and bright green. So we didn't overcook it to where it's like a muddled green. It's nice and bright green. It has a little bit of that char on there. That's not burnt, that's flavor. And so I'm just gonna stick this in the fridge just for a tad, put it in a bowl, and
both cauliflower and broccoli take a char really
well.
And I mean, like, it can be almost black and it still is delicious. Like, it can really hold up to it.
I'm gonna stick that in the fridge, and while I'm gonna use the same pan to put our quinoa on.
And so the biggest difference with the quinoa versus the farro is that quinoa is going to be considered gluten-free, so it's not actually wheat-based. So that could be another option. It's still going to have a good amount of protein and fiber. So again, we have a lot of plant-based options going into both of these dishes, just in a way that we're enhancing that nutritional quality too.
Yeah, and for the one that I did, like you could easily, cook your farro in chicken stock, you could cook it in vegetable stock, you could really go completely vegetarian with it. Like I said, I just had trouble getting away, like not using the cheese. So I compromised.
That's
I
fine. It's all
compromised.
about
We're
compromise.
Talked about just steps.
Yes,
Right.
yes, absolutely.
So, but that'll cook for about, honestly, 5 to 8 minutes because it was already pretty warm when it went in the oven. But you could very easily have that set, put it in the refrigerator overnight, and then fire it, 45 minutes to an hour before you're ready for dinner the next day. And it'll actually hold quite well. So it's a really good kind of run when you can, not when you have to style dish.
Run when you can.
That's right.
So I just took my quinoa, have it on a nice flat layer on that baking sheet, still at 425. And then what that's going to do is going to dry out. I make sure I drained it really well after I cooked it. But that at that degree in the oven, it's going to dry out that nutritional yeast. So it's going to kind of become almost like crunchy. And then you guys know I couldn't help it. But I did add a little bit of smoked paprika to that. So that's another depth of flavor. I don't think, Michelle, it's going to hurt the nutritional value.
Nope, not at all. Brightens it up.
But it's just going to add another layer of flavor to the dish in that sense. Now, we're also going to add some almonds to this. Some almond sliver, because once again, that's texture. Somebody might be like, because most broccoli salads have like cranberries or raisins or anything like that. Because I didn't want this to be leaning towards a sweet and we wanted to keep it on a savory, we're not adding any of that. So we basically just have all these really great, and if you notice, have all these wonderful colors, because people don't understand that also your brain translates deliciousness. It starts in the brain. When you see these bright colors, it releases certain things in the brain that say, that may be good. So we have the bright orange and we have the red onions going with that nice bright green. We'll toss this all together, and you're going to have different textures, different colors, and it's going to really be well-rounded.
Yeah, and I like that we shredded down the carrot, because remember, when we clean off different produce, we might be stripping away the extra fiber. So this way, on how he did it, yeah, it's gonna have different texture and color to it, but we're actually keeping all the fiber because we're eating the skin.
Yes.
So the more of the plant that you're consuming, the better situation you're putting your body in.
I'm definitely in the anti-peel camp. Like unless we're fine dining and we're talking top shelf plating. We don't peel carrots at home.
Yeah.
Or root vegetables, beets or anything like that. Like we just scrub them really good and then eat all that together with it. Delicious. That's gonna be really pretty, Chuck.
Yeah.
Add those in there. This isn't a daisy dollop because it's not sour cream, but I put a dollop or two. I don't want to overdo it. Now, the thing is because this broccoli is still a little bit warm, it's going to basically soak up and take in that dressing in a really, really great way. So it's gonna.
I bet that'd be like really good, just kind of ambient, like slightly off warm,
Yeah.
like let it sit for a half an hour or something
Yeah.
like that, and then go at it. It would be really, really great. This is one of those things that's going to be better as it sits a little bit.
Yep.
Maybe even tomorrow, like when the onions kind of soften up and really let go. Ton of flavor in that. It smells really good.
Definitely. And actually with this dressing, you could just, if you make it an extra, you can always use it as dip and just actually dip your veggies in it later. So just try and find multiple purposes for everything too.
And just kind of speaking to usage, like broccoli stems Like the
Yes.
interior of a broccoli
Mhm.
stem, like if you just cut those up and eat those like a crudité, like, or just dip them in dressing, like that is some of the most delicious, crunchy, sweet, fibrous, and same way with cauliflower, you know, right down through the middle, is all really great.
And if you're using like a head of broccoli or so, you know, most people just like the florets, you know, the stalk and stems get a bad rap. Well, to cut down on waste, you could take those and you could shave those down.
Yeah.
And you could put those in this salad or for any other salad or so, and have those shaved stalks, stems, so you're not wasting any of it. Because most time, what do? We cut all that off, throw it away,
Right.
and just have these florets. But to be able to have full use of it, shave those up too, shred
Well,
them.
and also like from a cost standpoint, you know,
Mhm.
like when you buy whole head broccoli versus broccoli crowns, you know, you pay less per pound by 20-30 cents. And you end up with that nice stock that can very much become part of whatever it is that you're cooking.
Mhm.
And again, it's sweet and crunchy. Makes a great crouton analog in a salad.
Mhm.
You know, if you just dice them
Yeah,
up and kind of
you
sprinkle them over it, it does have a nice toothsome crunch to it.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody's seen in the produce selection, like in the bagged veggies, is that they do have broccoli coleslaw basically, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's literally the ends of the broccoli,
Yeah.
so you can do your own thing
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, and I have seen that like slaw.
Mhm.
Yeah, so don't waste.
You want a couple plates, Joe?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna give it a little bit longer on that, and then we'll sprinkle that over, and this will be done. And you can try it and see if it needs a little salt or anything like that. I added a little bit to the broccoli, but other than that, I didn't add any more.
And sometimes like when you do serve food cold or, you know, room temp, like seasoning is definitely something that you want to take into account. And obviously, like with his dressing, you know, lots of big high profile flavors, which is really important when you're eating cold or not hot food.
Right.
Because seasoning can come through kind of mute when you're not warm.
Yeah, so you definitely want to taste it, check it. You know, I always, you check it at different points of your preparation. Like I said, we salted it when we put the broccoli in, but now we added all this other stuff. So we want to try it again just to make sure it doesn't have too much, make sure it has enough. It's right at that, like Josh said, you know, depending on warmth or cold, if it's been affected. Ready?
That's so good.
Yes. Dried that quinoa out. Got our nutritional yeast in there.
That smells awesome. I can't wait to eat it.
Man, that smells good.
Sounds like that rain's finally here.
Oh, is this the weather everybody was talking about?
It's the one.
Does anybody have any questions so far?
What's everybody thinking? Everybody's quiet today.
Well, Michelle,
Yes, Dan?
since you requested a question, I have never used, or as far as I know, experienced nutritional yeast.
Mhm.
Can you give a little tutorial about it?
I can start. So it's gonna, well, actually, if I can start. A lot of times people will use it to add in like that Parmesan flavor. So it's a replacement for a lot of like vegan dishes. You'll see them utilize nutritional yeast. So it's gonna give you some protein. It's actually a great source of fiber for the small amount that you're actually getting in different recipes. And actually a lot of people, if you do like this air popped popcorn, what you can do is sprinkle the nutritional yeast on top of it and use that as your flavoring.
Well, how is nutritional yeast different than other yeast?
I'm gonna pass that on to one of these
So-
gentlemen.
I mean, honestly, there are so many different types of yeast that are available to
Really?
us. That they're farmed, they're bred. I mean, they basically breed them like livestock for individual characteristics. So a nutritional yeast has a tendency to, again, just tip those flavor scales, right? It's got a lot of flavor to it, as opposed to a baker's yeast or a bread yeast, which is bred for respiration, right? Or for leavening. So yeah, that's about as close as I'm willing to get.
Yeah.
Might have to do some research. We'll talk next month.
Yeah. You can continue.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that'll teach you to ask for questions.
Hey, yeah, right? No, I love it. Because now I'm gonna go home and be like, I have homework.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my casserole.
That looks great.
And it very much is a casserole, and we'll just do a little bit more parsley on it, and maybe just a little touch of a little bit more cheese just for fun, and then you could do a little drizzle of olive oil around that, it look really sharp. So there you go. That is a mushroom and farro casserole with charred cauliflower.
Looks and smells great. Too bad you guys can't smell
No doubt.
what, yeah. Can you guys see though? What the finished products look like?
Yeah.
This is our dinner. So like, yeah. Yeah, come on.
No, you're fine.
Feel free.
Yeah.
Great show.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Something that you guys will try at home? Seems very manageable. And you really could make a whole dish out of this. You know, you could definitely.
You
layer
didn't
in
try the
protein.
salad.
Just come back with it.
Well, I was trying to think if I can eat them both.
Or at least taste, it doesn't
All right.
matter. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't want to insult the chef. Yeah, I don't eat all. Thank you.
Okay, now, okay.
Anybody have any other questions or any comments or?
Give it up.
Both thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Show. So you guys don't know, we do have one guest here in person and she's given the thumbs up. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try that.
Yeah, please do.